as far as working with a composer as a director, I really just, it's just like, they were talking about casting, and, I've done narrative work, and I've now done a documentary, and it's just so important to be able to communicate, and, it's like, do you like hanging out with that person? Because you're going to have to develop a shorthand with them. No matter if you're far away from them or in the room, you're going to have to develop a shorthand, and you really have to just be able to get along. Obviously you like their work, but you have to be able to communicate with that person because, you work with people very closely on something that's really close to your heart, and you have to enjoy it, I think. I would rather not enjoy it, so that's my advice.
Way back at the lab, I think it was Carter Burwell said something that sounds very simple, which was have fun. At the time, I didn't get it. It was like, I got to torture myself. I have to stay up for 40 hours in a row. It's like, but I don't know if it's having kids or what, but it's like, it's a real honor to be able to give a part of yourself to emote and help tell someone else's story. And I found that when I take a step back and go for a walk and think about enjoying the process and having fun, the music ends up a lot better.
What I think I really learned in this last cooperation is that you can really trust the process, that it's not just about the first meeting, and if the first meeting doesn't click, you're doomed or so, but that you can trust the process, or even if you give the wrong advice or you use the wrong terms, it's not the end of everything. It's just like one path you took, and you can just find something else. You can try to find another way to communicate, and maybe for this one cue you have to still find another way. And for this it will be temp tracks, and for this it will just be like a word describing the emotion or so. But you can like trust the process. And the second thing is just really because of this love for temp tracks. What I found out what helped me is to not jump to a decision too quickly, but to take back the new score back to the editing room and to do the same thing you did with the temp track basically. So you put it there, just play around with it. You maybe cut something else. You just move it to the left, to the right, so you also get used to it. And that's where you either see that it now works and now you're used to that new music, or if it still doesn't work, you maybe then know that you definitely something has to change.
I was going to say the same thing as you about the temp track music. Like, if the composer writes something that's really different than the temp music, don't just write it off the first time you listen to it, because there was actually a scene, Todd wrote a different piece of music for one scene that had worked a certain way. This is the Anya and the red light being frustrated, and the cue Todd wrote, it made the scene play totally differently. And at first we were like, well, or I was like, well, and not that I didn't like it, but I was like, the movie's different. How do you change the movie? And so I had to listen to that like 4 times, and I was like, oh my God, it's so much better. But it can take a minute.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because I wanted to talk about that cue this whole time. No, Todd, it was great when you're open. You have to be open, right? And so this one cue, the scene was it was feeling sad for our characters, and it was just driving me nuts for about 8 months. And then Todd came in, and we really worked on it. All right, and then at a certain point, remember, David, we were in the room, and we were all right, let's hear it. We're down to the wire. I think
we were a little past the wire.
We were past the wire. And Todd played it, and I was like, I got up and I started like, that's so great. It totally changed the scene. And it made it so much more important to the film, and it sort of stayed. My only advice is just to be open and leave your ego at the door and be willing to be wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah, for composers, be open, be fast, and know that if you had a good idea, you've got another one. Get ready to throw it out, because you can't get attached to things. It has to be more like, I say it has to be more like ping pong than chess. You really have to throw ideas back and forth and be able to communicate them as quickly as possible.